Welcome. Welcome, everyone, to the 45th edition of the Home Theater Hub. We already got Mr. Fred jumping in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Fred. How are you, sir? So, we got Mr. Paul in the house today. Ike's not going to be joining us, but, you know, we definitely will miss him. Also, want to say thoughts and prayers to everyone that's embracing the hurricane in northern Florida today. So, luckily, I am in South Florida, and the bands are out in the Atlantic Ocean and on the East Coast, or excuse me, on the West Coast of Florida. So, luckily, we're dodging a bullet here, but thoughts and prayers are definitely with everyone that's going to embrace this storm because it's category 4 the last time I looked at it. So it's definitely going to be pushing some sustained winds. Up in my old stomping grounds, Tallahassee, Perry, Florida. So thoughts and prayers again. Mr. Paul, how you doing, sir?
Well, it sounds better than a lot of other people. It sounds like, yeah. I'm. We got rains, but nothing newsworthy. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Several.
yeah.
Just,
Yeah, no.
so,
So anything new in the going on in the home theater world for you?
uh, nothing new in the home theater space really. It's really just kind of that's on pause. I do have plans right now. It hasn't actually been a full thought, but like I said, I want to paint the theater. I want to have to build some stands for some speakers for the new couch that I have and stuff like that. Nothing too major, and do some decor that'll match, the barcade type of, not necessarily the theme of the barcade, but kind of the hey, this space looks put together type of deal. Because you can
Right.
tell my theater's just a vacant, um, you know, canvas, except for, some sound panels and some furniture. Other than that, there's really nothing.
Look,
I
I
didn't,
visited there. I
I did,
thought you did an excellent job, especially you hid the speakers behind the couch, your subwoofers. You hid the all the gear in the front by building like a special, panel there. Not that you have to hide the gear, but you definitely took it out of the sight line, so you're 100% attracted to your screen, right? One
yeah,
16
yeah,
by 9,
yeah.
150, right?
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna upgrade to a 165
Oh, nice.
just because it's like, yeah, I got the wall space one.
Yeah, yeah. And if you
So
think about upgrading to, one of the new Epsons, you get that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
get, because you're
I
you're
will
in the.
have to see if that is the case because I know the problem with that is it is around the 7 for the newer one or something like that, I
Mhm.
believe, 7,000. And at that price, I mean, you are touching some of the lower end JVCs or maybe some of the older models, and
Mhm.
it's like, well,
Yeah, so you should be able
but
to, do a 160. You said 165, right?
hmm
Yeah, you should be able to do a 165 with 800, an 800 or maybe the NX7. I think the NX7's what 2500 lumens or so. But
yeah,
the 6050 that you have is what 3000 lumens, I believe.
I think
Is
it's 20. I don't know, 20. I thought it was only 2,800, and I don't remember. It's bright enough. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you can't have direct sunlight, but I mean, you can watch TV and movies during the day, which we do a lot in that space. That's why it's like I've never went with the JVC. They're way more accurate out of the box. They're dimmer. I could make the Epson more accurate, but once you do, your lumen output is really kind of equivalent to the JVC, so it's kind of hard to watch. So I have different modes set on it. I have like bright, and then I have normal for when I'm watching a movie at night.
Yeah.
Other than that, like I said, I just wanted to do the decor, make it a little, just bring it together, not have any necessary blank spaces on the walls, and except for maybe the front. I'm gonna paint where the screen is a black, and then do a more of an accent color on the walls. But on the other walls, I'm not gonna do a full black room or anything.
Chuck says I got
I
an
know,
NZ8 for sale.
I
Not
know,
quite
man.
yet, Chuck.
I don't think he would be willing to give me a good enough deal for that thing.
Not quite yet. I can't sell it off yet. I got some other stuff I got to take care of, like carpet, a riser, all kind of other stuff first, right? So,
Well,
uh,
you need the money to buy all that stuff.
well, then I went and purchased something else, right? So
Yeah.
I'd have to,
That's
you
true.
know. But yeah,
That's true.
now it says here the 6050 is 2600 lumens. So
26. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Thought it was 25 or 2700, but
yeah. But that
uh,
that's in a perfect world, right? You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's like, whatever. Like it's capable of that with all the colors, but it's not as accurate on the colors whenever it's that bright. So the colors are capable of doing that, but it's not at a delta that is um, like if you do the max, like I've measured it and it's pretty far out. We're talking like a delta of like 14 or something like that, which is for color is really far out there. And by the time you get it down to like 4 or 5 delta E on the color, you've lost like you're way down
right.
on brightness, way down.
Yeah, even the LS 12,000, which is a step up, which I wouldn't say step up. It just adds a laser, right? So
Mm.
that's still only 2700 lumens. It's same thing. So it's 100
Okay,
more
that's why.
lumens. So you're not even
Okay,
gonna see the difference. You
no,
know?
but 3,300 lumens,
Yeah,
man, that'll probably be a step up from
definitely,
2,500.
definitely,
That's a
definitely.
whole projector, you know.
Oh.
A
Yeah,
lot of projectors don't even
that's
put
like
out
double
that
stacking it.
difference.
You could
Yeah,
just get
yeah.
another 6050 and double stack it.
Yeah, I thought about that if it was doable, or I could do that would be pretty interesting. I mean, I know you can do it, but it'd be really hard to align it.
Yeah,
And I don't
absolutely.
know, I've never done that in practice for myself, so I don't know if it would just kill your black levels. I don't know, I don't know what it would do. But
Yeah,
did you
that's
ever have you watched anything recently?
um no, not recently. I did watch. We haven't mentioned it for a while, but I watched The Menu.
Mm.
Was probably the last movie that I watched. It was pretty freaky. It was about people going to like an island to do like a kind of like the guy was like, what do they call those chefs? Michelin. He was like a Michelin chef or whatever, and you go to the island to for like $1,200 to record to eat like a 8 course meal, and it's got some twists and turns in it. I'm not gonna talk. Let's just put
Yeah,
it this way.
sounds like one
It's
of
a
those
horror movie.
movies where the course meal is people or something crazy like that.
You're on the track there. So,
I
but
mean,
yeah,
just the synopsis alone, I'm like, yep, I already know this
yeah.
storyline.
So I think that was the last movie that I watched. I am interested in going to. I think I'm gonna. My son, he's been kind of interested in Transformers. He does swimming lessons, and he picked out a few Transformer tattoos and stickers and stuff from his swimming coach, and so I'm thinking about taking him to see Transformers One. I'm hearing very good things about that.
I have not even. Is that supposed to be like a restart of it or
Yeah,
what?
I think it's just a brand new animated. It's an animated version of, and a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
people saying it's the best Transformers out of the Transformers franchise. So Rich wants to know: are you going ATS?
No, I do not have the room to do if I did in walls, I could, but then I would be totally changing my speakers out. I don't want to do that. I like the speakers I have now, and I don't want to spend any more money. And And yeah, I only have like maybe 8 inches at most. So I would have to build like I could do. It just would look ugly. It wouldn't look. It just wouldn't look kosher for sure. And kosher is probably the wrong word, but it wouldn't be balanced because it would
Right.
cover a window casing, and that would give a non-asymmetric look in the room, and it would just look like it would just look horrible.
Yeah,
It
I
would be
think the only
very
way that you
noticeable.
could do, because you have the way that your room's set up. So people that aren't familiar, Paul comes through his front door. His barcade is to the right. There's a kind of like a hallway between the two, but it's an open hallway. And then you walk into his theater. His kitchen is also to the right, with a wall separating, and then a couch, kind of dividing. And then he's using a front wall off to the left, and it has a doorway to the left also. And I think the only way that you could get away with doing AT is to actually use that hollow wall, you know, on the backside. So you would cut your speaker holes out of that wall and put the speakers in there, and then kind of take from the hallway
Yeah,
going to your
yeah, I could.
bedroom. That
Yeah,
would be the
yeah,
only to make it aesthetically
yeah, yeah.
looking good
I mean,
from
I
this
could put him
side.
behind the. Let's see, Rich. If I put him behind the screen without putting them in the wall, the speakers. By the time you had the speakers without them even being angled, they protrude out further than the um, the casement of the window. The only reason you don't see it or you haven't noticed it is because I have the curtains covering it.
Right.
There's only like 6 inches from the back wall to the case of that first window in the corner, and that's just there's no speakers that are that shallow. Like you said, I could cut out my guest room, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through all that, I would just build a
Do in
new
walls.
dedicated. I would well, I would just do a dedicated room down in the basement. I've got
Yeah, that's
plenty
true. Yeah, you have
there,
tons of room in the basement.
but I know for a fact it's one of those things. I don't want to have a theater room that never gets used.
So
I'm
the
not.
the speakers you're using now, they're the monolith, right? Your main speakers.
That's the ones that I have now, yeah, and I've got some
Yeah. So I
future.
mean, if you really wanted to do AT, you could probably do three in walls, three of the monolith in walls.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
and they're. I know we've had a couple people on this channel. The last two guests, they both have
Yeah.
had those same exact.
Oh,
So they probably would timber match pretty good with the rest of them also. If you
yeah.
if that's something you wanted to pursue.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I've
know.
got a set of speakers that I'll be replacing them with that work for me with 10-inch mid drivers and a full compression horn.
Nice.
But I'll show those later.
So have you seen the new Arendals yet?
No, I have not even been keeping up. Whenever I don't mind when companies tease something for a couple weeks. But
Yeah, they've been at it for a while.
like, dude, I'm not even. I don't even care what you got to show because it's kind of like a movie where they show all the best parts, in the trailer, all the funniest part, and then you watch the movie and you're just like, oh my god, this is horrible. Like you literally watched the whole movie in the three trailers that they showed.
Yeah.
It's like that's what I feel like this Arendelle or Arendelle,
They
however.
definitely have built up the suspense. I'm
That's too much. It's too. This has gone too long. It's like, come on, guys.
Shane Lee posted a picture of them. I guess he's got them in already. I see if I can show one on my screen here. So
Yeah, and that's not even like earth shattering. It's like,
right.
okay, like it's a speaker. You got a waveguide built into a speaker grill.
Yeah, they do have a pearlescent look to them though.
As far as the
Uh,
waveguide is
yeah.
concerned,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, they're a very good sounding speaker. When we
Yeah, no, they're. I haven't heard them in one of the shootout, the
yeah, the
1723.
monitors. Yep.
Yeah, the monitors, and yeah, that whenever we were doing blind listening, or whatever, as close as you can, that was one of the top three
Yep.
speakers that I chose. So.
Yeah, I think we had like 8 or 10 on the Lazy Susan, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. At M Wave. That was the
Yeah.
that wasn't last year. That was the year previous, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, you know, I haven't had a lot of time to watch a lot of stuff. As I mentioned last week, we moved my office, so now we're unpacking everything, trying to get everything organized, and by the time I get home with the kid and doing everything else, I still got 3 pieces of drywall sitting on my last 3 pieces of drywall that I need to hang are sitting on the floor, and I keep trying to find time to
That's a
do it,
good
but
place to.
every time I try to find time, I look up at 7 o'clock, 7:30, and the kids got to get ready for bed and everything else like that. So with all of his activities after school and swimming and he does some speech classes and everything else. So it's difficult just to find time to break
Yeah. Yeah.
into there. So on your build, you're gonna paint the whole wall black, the whole front wall black, or are
Just
you
the
gonna velvet
front
it?
wall. I'm gonna leave the trim white though. I'm gonna paint the um, wall black. Probably replace some electrical outlets. Move my speakers a little bit, and then run new wires. And I'm gonna mount my rear surrounds. I'm gonna take them out of where they're at now and actually put them further away, actually in the kitchen all the way. So that way, I have the 12-foot roof, and I'm sitting here, so they'll be about 15 feet away here. But then my 9-foot roof, but a little bit further away, but they'll be right at about the same distance on the surrounds. So, or heights, I mean. So that way, my heights will be kind of equal distance and kind of, I'll be at a little bit different angles, but as far as the sound and stuff like that, I think it'll, instead of having the ones that are just literally right above you that, don't, they don't even play into the room. They just literally
Right.
just shoot straight down.
Do
'Cause
the
I'm sitting
and the
right.
YPAL would be able to map for that? You think for them to be, you know, because it sounds like you're going to have to go on top of your cabinets, right? Because if you're going into the kitchen, you kind of got like
Yeah.
a separating
Yeah, it'll
island,
be on
right?
top of it'll be on top of the cabinets in the back. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the wipeout does like some 30 meters or something like that as far as distance is concerned.
So Fred says, how long is this gonna?
It'll probably be once I start. It'll probably be a couple months because it would take probably 3 or 4 days to do the painting. I think I'm gonna rebuild the center console that I have, and since I'm building three pieces, technically 4 pieces of furniture, that's what's gonna take the longest. That will take several weeks just in itself.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to have to run. I'll be running new wire in the wall, so I'm gonna have to go.
Did you get that Audio Quest wire?
I have a higher end audio cable than that. I don't
Oh,
go with
nice.
that cheap Audio Quest stuff.
Is it called Monolith?
No, no, it's probably General Electric.
Is it coat hangers?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
General Electric lamp cords.
Yeah.
No, I haven't ordered the speaker wire yet, but I will order some. I'm gonna need several hundred feet, so
Yeah,
because I'm
especially
gonna.
if you're gonna run them all the way back to your kitchen there.
Yeah,
So
that'll
to,
be probably 70 feet by the time it goes up. So I'm gonna
up the
need 200
walls
feet.
down, but yeah.
Yeah, just for the two rears, and then I'm gonna redo
Bed layer.
the bed layer, and I'm gonna get a channel to hide the wires in, because right now I just have it. People don't even notice because I've got a little wire, uh, one of those like power cable hiders that you get from like Staples or whatever, but it's the same color as my carpet.
Like the
And
track.
the wires are underneath
Yeah.
there, yeah. And it's just going right down like on the right side of the carpet.
I never noticed it, so yeah.
Yeah,
did a
that's what
good
I'm saying.
job.
You don't notice it. I mean, unless someone points it out, you would never notice. But I'm going to run it against the wall and get a big channel, like a fake molding, and run it all along the baseboard and do that just
So are you going
like.
to do any type of Rich says don't forget to use the tubing. You're one story, right? So you have full access to your attic, right? I mean, you have a basement, but it's a one, basically a
Yeah,
one story.
yeah, I have full access to. I've been up there.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you have that type of access, I don't know that running
I don't
Smurf
run. I don't
tube
have. I
is
only run tubing for the electrical. That way, if you cut
it
into the
makes
wall and
meets code.
it,
Yep.
it it rattles, yeah.
Hmm.
But I don't need tubing to run new wire because they're all running to this different spots. It's
Yeah.
just not.
You know, if you're doing it like me, I'm between the first floor and the second floor. So,
Mm,
you know, once you
in
shut
that
the
case,
yeah,
yeah, you would want it for that spot. Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, once you shut the you know, put the ceiling up with the drywall, there's no getting back to it, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. In that case, yeah, that makes absolute sense to run it. But yeah, mine literally, I, whenever I'm up in the attic, I can see down into the
the
wall
wall
and
cavity. So
see
they
the
didn't put
light.
a top plate.
Yeah, there is a top plate, but I mean,
Okay.
I have a hole.
Yeah.
You know, I drill a hole to go down in there, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, when you
just
have full access like that, you know, I in my house in Tallahassee, I mean, I could stand up and walk through the whole attic. Yeah,
yeah,
that's how tall it was.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
So I
yeah, I
don't
can
think
do.
I would have ever wasted time to run Smurf tubing if
Yeah.
I have that kind of access.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and that's exactly what I got. You have to climb up the 9 to 12 foot ceiling tray. You have to be flexible and climb up that. But yeah,
mhm.
even on top of that, you have stand up room.
Yeah, and then
So
you have the basement also, so you could always go down if you wanted to, right?
yes,
So
and
you
I
could, right?
probably yeah, I might run some electrical wire in the barcades, so because some wires are like for my couch type of deal. Put like a little electric plate like in the floor,
Yeah,
just to that way the power can be underneath the
right, right where
chair
the
and
tabletop is and stuff.
going
Yeah,
across. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna be that because no one really notices it
right.
anyway. You know, like nobody cares. But it's one of those things.
It's just one of those things you know about it, right? So it's got to be done the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
you want to
exactly.
do it.
Nobody
Yeah,
cares. Nobody. Yeah. So it's like, you know.
yeah. So today we're gonna talk about something that you know I don't think it's covered enough. You know, Paul has taken probably thousands of measurements on REW in his room and other people's rooms and everything else like that. So we're going to talk a little REW. So Paul, before we dive into like you know what does REW do? What why should we take measurements? Why should we take measurements in our room?
Oh man. Well, there's two school of thoughts to that. One, you don't need to, you know, leave well enough alone, right? But for the niche crowd, which we are, you you do it for several reasons. Mostly just to get a factual baseline of what your system is doing relative to what you're told. You know, some people say, hey, these things are capable of, you know, blah blah blah, and then you actually run a measurement on it, or you're like, no, we're not even close to, you know, doing that. What? And whatever
Yeah.
that may be, SPL or distortion or whatever. One of the things that a lot of people loves frequency response, and you know that's the biggest thing. And then once you see it in a room, you know, people really freak out, or you know, it's one of those things where sometimes it's better off just not knowing, I guess, because you're like, oh, hey, this sounds great. And then whenever you look at a measurement, you're like, oh man, I've got this big -5 dB in this range. I can improve, excuse me, improve my audio, you know, if I just, you know, get rid of that, you know, -5
Right.
uh, dB
Yeah, I
range.
was thinking the same. I was like, yeah, you can leave well enough alone, and you can let Odyssey or Dirac or what's the other ones? Whatever other correction, Room Perfect, and whatever the art the what is the other one that the not the Arcan but the they do? I forgot now. But anyway, we you can let them do the measurements, or you can actually find out if you're sitting in a suck out, right? So you could be thinking, man, this bass is good. And then you actually start taking measurements around the room, and you find out it's 15 dB hotter somewhere else than where you're sitting. Or, even you may have just a frequency suck out, right? So, and I don't think you're going to know that unless you actually take some measurements, or you know you go do the subwoofer crawl, right? You crawl around, you're sitting seat to seat, and testing and listening and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that, Paul?
Uh, well, I don't. The subwoofer crawl, as it is a. If I was to do that, I wouldn't do it quite the way. I guess I don't know how they tell people to do it anymore,
Right.
but it's it's one of those things where without measuring, the problem is most people, whenever, especially whenever they get a subwoofer, the first thing that they want to do is hear the subwoofer, right? Because a lot of people, and this is a lot of people will buy like a cheap subwoofer, right? That's their entry, right? And a lot there's people that are like, oh, never do that. You're wasting your money. Blah 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 blah. Well, I argue that even because even if a subwoofer only goes down to 30 hertz, right? What that allows you to do is to bump up that bass, just the bass, not the high end. So it's kind of like a superficial auto EQ or curves of equal loudness because you're bumping up that subwoofer and you're listening to your sound at normal listening volumes, right? Because the thing people tend to forget is until you get up to, and I forget the exact, I think it's 80 dB, you don't hear the frequency range the same. The bass is much lower, so you literally have to bump up the bass like 5 dB anytime it's below, especially 70 dB, which is pretty loud, Most
Right.
people aren't listening to even that. So when you do get even a cheap subwoofer, what people do is they turn up that sub. So now you're listening at 60 dB, but your bass is 5 dB hotter. So you hear the difference, and you hear that subwoofer, and you get more of that impact at lower volumes, even on a cheap subwoofer. Okay. But back to the original question. So you buy a cheap subwoofer. What, and people will argue this, oh, we hear, you experience certain interactions, but your hearing range, what people don't realize is the impact is actually 30 to like 80 hertz. That's your hard hitting, thumping bass, right? And whenever you're walking around doing the bass crawl, the minute you hear that 40 hertz or that 30 hertz, and you're like, well, really, it's probably around 50 hertz, to be honest. Once you hear that at a really loud volume, you're like, oh, that's the spot. Yeah. But that one spot might be 10 dB hot just in that one thing, because again, you're listening for, oh, I want to hear my sub because you just bought a sub, right?
Right.
So, and that is why you do kind of want to do, you can get away with one sub, but you have to have it perfectly placed and only listening in one
position,
right?
Yeah.
So most of the time you need at least two. If you do 4 subs, you probably don't even need to measure. If you had a rectangularish shaped room and you do 4 subs in the corners or mid walls of all, you are already so far beyond what normal people, even your upper echelon people, sure, you can, use it to get that 1/nth degree, but man, I'm telling you, once you get to that level, it's
So, wouldn't the
you're kidding
measurements also
yourself.
help you with phase though, to see if once you got 4 subwoofers, right? Now you're looking at messing with phase and stuff like that. What?
No, because that's just it. So when you phase align, you're phase aligning, that gets more complicated. It's you're aligning it just like you would, man. If you phase align for certain positions, it's not going to be aligned for all positions. But once you do 4 different subs, that takes care of that as well. I mean, so every suck out or null is generally, most people, and I'm talking even your upper echelon people, do not mess with phase on your subs. They just don't. That you try to align your crossover frequencies, or you do your like you're really trying to figure out what your room is controlling. That's really what you're doing for the most part. And like I said, if you do 4 subs, well, you're counteracting all that. So every time you have a phase misaligned over here, you put another sub over there. Well, that gets rid of that misalignment. That's why you're doing the multiple subs, right? That's getting rid of that suck out, if you would, because of the multi subs. You can either have standing waves, you can have wave cancellations, which is where the 2 of them, meet. But once you get multiple subs, the more sub you have, the less likely you are to really need to do that. I mean, honestly, if you weren't like some geek that liked using REW like me or something like that, and you're like, hey, what's the quickest, easiest way? I'm like, if you got the money, just buy 4 subs, boom, don't even worry about it. You are, yeah, sure, you might be able to tweak it a little bit, but I'm telling you, you're already 90% to perfect, or as perfect as your room will allow. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you're not going to be able to do much more once you get past those 4 subs. Now, sure, volume and SPL and
Right.
all that stuff. You can get as many subs as you want, you know.
So I'm going to
That's a whole
address this
different.
question here. Rob Johnson says, "My main room is a living room, kind of like what you have.
Yeah.
Should I swap two 10-inch subs for two 15-inch start?" So I mean, we as Paul was just getting into this, it depends on what kind of SPL you're looking for. Depends on if you know are trying to pressurize the room. I've not heard the Stark sealed subs. However, I have a friend, um, John Anthony. He actually is loving the Stark sealed subs. So
Now, I
and
will
he
tell you
has
this.
he has 8 subs in his room too. So and he's loving
So
those.
here's the thing, like when you get bigger subs, oh, well, if you want to pressurize, except it's in an open space, ugh, yeah, truly pressurize. So
Hmm.
when you pressurize a room, you have the same sound everywhere. Like that's essentially your doesn't matter where you go, you're hearing the same noise. That's really hard, really expensive to do in a large room. Like I would need JTR level speakers, like 4 or 5 of them, to pressurize my 8,600 cubic feet airspace. Now, that my room's not that big, but it's open. I have my living room, 12-foot ceiling, my kitchen, dining room, hallway, entryway, and barcade, all in the same open space.
Hmm.
All open. Uh, think of it like water. that's and in order to pressurize that, it's as if the water is pushing out on the walls. If
Well,
the
one thing
water
that
can
you
go
did was you
anywhere,
added the near field right behind the
yeah, I
couch,
added the near
which
fields. That
gives you that
helped.
tactile feel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
I
So I
did
mean,
that.
you're you know it may not be pressurizing the room, but you're getting the same almost the same feeling as if the room was pressurized because you got the near field subs right there. I mean, I definitely
If you're
didn't
in an
feel.
open concept, if you're in a living room open concept, depending on the size, 215s, you're going to be hard pressed to
Yeah,
pressurize a
I agree.
large.
Yeah,
Yeah, you need it
or two
close.
18s. You know.
Yeah,
So,
well,
but the
shoot, even
Stark Sound are the right price. You know, a lot of times they run a buy one get one special. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and they're from what I understand, my friend loves them. So he says
yep.
they're a good sound. So
When you go from tens to larger speakers, you're getting that lower frequency response, and a lot of people are like, "Oh man, they don't sound as good," because those tens roll off so quick, and all you're hearing is that punchiness, right? So whenever you go bigger, you're getting into those lower, uh, like droning sound. You're like once you start getting into 30 and below, it's like that's more of that drony sound versus 50, 60 hertz, which your 10-inch sub does just perfectly fine. And is what happens is you're producing that sound wave, and without you know really good, that's where you would want to measure, because now you're producing more sound, and your room's interacting with that um, sound even more. So it's almost it's overtaking, right? You could have like, oh, I have like a 10 dB bump at 30 hertz. If you don't know, all you hear is like, man, these don't sound as punchy, right? It's just, man, you just have a lot more sound going on. So it gets kind of weird, because even I had 4 10s in my room, and man, those things hit hard. I mean, it was like, man, this is awesome. There's just 4 10s. Well, now I have the 215s, which yeah, still not as punchy as the 410s, but I have the three 12-inch near fields, and yeah, I can get punch out of that. Now it's not pressurized at all, like not even close. I would have to get like probably 12 15-inch subs
right.
to do that. Like, or like a couple, like true 3,000 watt RMS, you know.
So Rob's saying maybe I get a third 10. I mean, you could, you know, put them near field, behind whatever you're, or right
Yeah,
beside whatever
and
you're
I'm
whatever you're
I'm
sitting
always
on.
a yeah, and I'm always a big proponent of matchy, just so
Hmm.
they're all easier to if you're doing something to one of them, it's affecting the actual near field stuff.
Yeah, but like you said, for $1,000 a pair for those Stark sounds, I don't think you can go wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of people have given them good reviews.
Now I tell you what I would do. I would look, especially now that the new SB series is coming out. There's people are selling their subs and trying to go bigger. You can get like, I think someone's selling a couple SBs here for like $3,000 for a pair of them,
Yeah,
just because they're trying
yeah,
to
that's
dump them.
true.
The SB16s, yeah.
That,
So be on
it just
the lookout for
depends
that.
on if he's going to get the wife acceptance factor or partner
Yeah,
acceptance
that's
factor
true.
or whatever for
That's
those,
the
right?
other thing that's nice about the tins. They take up
Yeah.
a lot less space.
So,
I mean, that's a
so
big.
from YouTube royalty, Mr. Giles says, for me, 15s over 10s every day of the week.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I get that. I mean, I get that. You want that low earth shaking, and that is nice. I mean, it's one of those things where once you go with the 15s, you're gonna want two more. I can tell you that. Let's just put it that way. If you go with the 15s, you're probably gonna want two more.
yeah, yeah,
So be ready to save up.
yeah. Save that other 1,000. So,
That's
let's talk about measurements. What equipment do I need to take measurements? Um, you know, from what I know, we need an Omni mic or a U mic, something like that, right?
yeah.
Some
Hmm.
sort of calibrated mic. We need REW, which it's a freeware. It's a free software. So I mean, I don't know how this guy hasn't charged for this particular program because it's an excellent program.
Hmm.
What else do you need? You need a laptop, right?
Yeah, you
Or
need a laptop, Mac or Windows. Um, some things that people forget: you need a decently long, capable USB, and HDMI, because you're gonna have a laptop that you're typing on that's gonna have a mic that you're gonna want to move around to measure, and you're gonna need a mic stand. Don't forget a stand. That's a lot. A lot of little things add up. Everyone's just, they always, just like people say, oh, REW is easy. Well, yeah, it is for people that know software, but it's not that. If you don't know what frequency means, the REW is so far beyond, you know,
right.
the standard that you, it's kind of like a woodworker or a car mechanic. Oh, changing a tire is easy, right? But a lot of people don't know how to change a tire. Like they don't even know where their jack is in the car,
Exactly.
let alone, oh, how
If
do
it
I
comes
change?
with one. My
Yeah,
Mercedes
yeah.
didn't even come with one. It was run flats.
Oh, well, there you go. That's nice. Yeah, for those
It is
better
until you have
off
to
than
pay four
me.
hundred dollars for that tire.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But other than that, you need HDMI or some sort of, if you're doing analog, you can use analog um, with REW as well, for different stuff, right? It doesn't just do HDMI, but if you're wanting to do LFE or anything like that, like through an actual AVR, you need HDMI so it can pick out the channels, because it'll be able to do the 7.1 bed layer. REW doesn't do heights as far as I know yet, yeah, because it's Atmos licensing thing. I'm probably so it's
Right.
like, so you have to get creative with that.
And I think with Odyssey, if you want to look at measurements, I think you got to upgrade, to the paid. I think it's like $200
Yeah, you got to
for
get the app, and I think it just gives you a guesstimation type of thing, right? I don't
right.
know that it's actually giving you an actual. I don't know. I don't know.
No,
I
you
have
can
not.
you can curtain it. You can do
You can curtain it and you can tell it what to do,
mhm.
right? But it doesn't actually give you a real measurement. Like, I don't think it does that. It just says, "Oh yeah, we made it match." It might not have matched at all.
I know there's some. Yeah, Rob says it's 199 and it gives actual.
Oh, does it? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I know
That's
you
good.
have Yamaha, so I don't know how familiar you are with Odyssey and
I'm not familiar with
multi
my.
EQ. But yeah, so I mean, you can take measurements that way also. But what we're going to
Yeah.
talk about today is
The
REW.
old didn't. Okay, so the new one does. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Because I was like, okay, that makes sense. So,
So yeah, we're going to talk about REW a little bit today. So the extra long USB. You also need an extra long XLR cable, right? If you're
HDMI.
H,
Oh well, if you're doing an XLR mic, that um, yeah, you wouldn't need uh, an extra long USB cable because normally
right.
is what you would have is an XLR audio interface that would be a
Hmm.
short USB and then an XLR long cable too.
Yeah, the
Where
Lumigen has a. You plug the mic into an XLR, not the Lumigen. I'm sorry, the Lindorf. You use an XLR, but yeah, the USB cables for the Omni mic or the what is it? U mic, U mic, and then the HDMI. What is the HDMI hook to?
the HDMI hooks to normally your receiver for audio output from the software because it's a
Okay,
source. So the computer becomes a audio source.
okay. So you take the HDMI and you connect it directly to your computer.
Yeah, you connect it to
And
your computer.
what if your laptop is one of these new MacBooks that don't have HDMI? You have to buy an adapter for that, right?
Yeah,
HDMI to
basically,
um,
yeah, it'll just
USB
be
C.
it'll be an HDMI to USB-C
Yep.
adapter. Yeah.
So yeah, if you make sure you check all
Yeah.
this stuff before. Look, I mean,
That's the thing. People say, "Oh, all you need is a $100 mic." It's like,
right?
yeah, and a $40 HDMI to USB-C adapter. If the USB cable that came with your mic still works, because those are super, super, super Temu, AliExpress
Hmm.
USB cables. And I have had more people say my thing isn't working, and I tell them, get a new USB cable. Boom, it works. Like even mine was defective. I bought a new one.
So
So I
Beefy
was like,
says
damn it.
the U mic came with a long USB cable.
Yeah, and it
So
depends on what you consider long, right?
right.
Like
So here's the
mine is
situation for me.
12, 12
I
feet
well,
long.
it's even further for me. I have
Yeah,
my room, then I have a dining room, and then I have steps that where my rack is, right? So I'm going to
yeah,
be running a USB extender that I can just literally plug something right into my. I'm gonna have like an outlet just for the USB in the riser that I can just plug another USB in. Space camper. Look at this. All right, never heard of those. Never
so
heard of those.
it's a Boulevard IPA. They have like different 9 inch. Oh, Beefy's bragging about his 9 inch USB cable. Yeah, that is pretty long. I'm definitely not there.
Oh man.
uh,
Yeah, so it's not
so,
just
but
like you said,
you
just
can
like a
kind of
microphone.
depending on how so the setup that I do for ease of use is I have an HDMI cable and it's long enough to go to the AVR. And then I take my laptop and I set it like halfway in between where I will be moving my mic. I set that off to the side, and then I have a USB extension with the with a shorter, like 6 foot USB cable that goes to the mic. And then is what I have, and this isn't required. I have a Bluetooth dongle keyboard. That way, I don't have to keep going over to my keyboard. I turn on my system, turn on the screen, and then REW pops up on my gigantic 150-inch screen. And that way I can control stuff from my remote laptop. So I'm sitting there carrying, this around. And the one I have is not this one, but it even has a mouse built in. So I'm doing everything
So like a
from
touchpad.
that. Yeah, from the that Bluetooth keyboard that I have, or wireless keyboard. Definitely don't have, but
make it easier.
It takes more than $100 mic. Let's put it that way.
Right.
You gotta have.
Yeah. So
a lot of people have a lot of this stuff already. So a lot of people may already have an HDMI adapter on their computer, or they might have an HDMI, output already. So.
Yeah. So So let's talk about getting it set up, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to plug the HDMI into your computer, and then you're going to plug the other end into one of your outs that would normally go. It would say go to TV or go to
You would plug it into one of your inputs on your AV.
One of your inputs. So your computer's acting as the actual receiver. Because it's providing the tone, right?
Your Blu-ray, your computer's acting like your Blu-ray player.
Right. Okay.
Playing the sound.
And then the Blu-ray sends all the sound. Your Blu-ray, or let's go with Kaleidoscape, right?
Yeah. You can't say
or
that.
Your
word.
Arvolution.
You don't have a drink.
All right. So your computer is providing the test tones.
Mm-hmm.
The pink noise, or whatever frequency that you're gonna provide, and then you're putting it into the input of your AVR, and then the U mic is also connected to your computer, right? One end into the U mic or Omni mic, and then it's plugged into your computer also. So I can read the measurements, correct?
Yeah, the mic is plugged into your computer. So your computer, all the measurement.
And then we've got all that hooked up. What are we objectively looking for? Once we do our first, so-called measurement, are you able to take us through a measurement here, Paul? Are you able to share your screen?
Try. My computer timed out and bumped off, so let me see if I can rejoin here. Boom. Let's see if I can even. I'm gonna mute at first.
Okay. So we're gonna try to pull up Paul's screen here. All right, let's see.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I don't want to be echoey. So.
All right, is that correct? We're not seeing your computer. We're seeing another angle of you.
Oh. Oh, I didn't hit screen share. Hold on. I guess I do have to do that. Okay, there. What are the pros and cons of replacing my two MKs? And 2 Martin Logan subawards with 5 mono price subs on under each section.
You still there, Paul?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, I was reading some questions here. Sorry.
Oh yeah, we'll get
Okay.
to them in 1 second. Let me try to get you back on the screen here. I don't know. What...
So, yeah, get me back on track. I zoned out. All right. Hopefully this doesn't. Let me move this keyboard here so I can actually see here. So this is REW. I don't know if there's a newer version. This particular version is 5.31.3. Setting it up is a little different.
Hey Paul, can you unmute yourself here? You got both of them on mute. Let's see. Says guest has muted themselves.
You have me muted.
I can hear you now.
You have me muted.
I have two things here that says guest has muted himself. Let me do something here. Let me go back to this. Can you hear me now? Yeah, you're still muted. Oh, goodness. Let's see. So can you unmute this one now, Paul? With your... There we go. Lovely technology.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
I'm unmuted now.
Now we go.
All right. You can hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. See, what happens is it just shows a mute on my face
Right.
on the one, but I have a separate mute that's unmuted. But then the other one, yeah, who knows? It got all weird.
No problem.
So
I think you got it worked out now.
real world technology, right?
I'm pretty sure it's the driver over here, so I apologize, everyone.
It gets complicated. I know, with all the different windows, and I only have like 4 windows for him to manage.
All right, so we've got our mic set up. Let's address some of these quick questions here. It says from Beefy, since you were reading them prior.
Oh, I totally.
Says I have a real question about near field. I asked Joe and Chana the other night, but they missed the point. Let's see. In my open plan loft condo, I have a massive volume of space that's impossible to pressurize with traditional subs, at least without pissing off the neighbors. My unit is built directly on concrete slabs, so I don't need to worry about vibration traveling through the floor. Monoprice has a line of thin subwoofers that can be placed under a couch. What are the pros and cons of replacing my two M&Ks and two Martin Logan subwoofers with 5 monoprice subs, one under each section of my sectional sofa, each sub facing up 8 inches under each guest booty. This would potentially negate any issues with room correction. Each seat gets its own base driver about 24 inches from the listening position. It seems like it'd be like base shakers, but with a wider frequency range. What's right doing this? What's wrong with doing this? What's right with doing this?
Okay, so one thing you have to keep in mind, unless you are sitting literally on top of the driver, and in this case, people say the rule of thumb is no further, your physical back cannot be further away than the diameter of the driver in order to get the energy that the driver produces. Okay, as near field as this, you're feeling the air, if you would, coming off of the bass driver. So unless you're literally putting them in the cushion, it would be no different than you just placing them around the room, anywhere. One thing you have to keep in mind, no matter how close you get to a subwoofer, it is, and again, the reason you need subwoofers, right? So a lot of people will say, okay, I have 24-inch drivers in my mains, right? Well, if those mains happen to be able to be perfectly placed, yeah, you wouldn't need subwoofers, right? Most of the time, though, with aesthetics and or the room, especially if you're in any kind of open concept, placing your stereo imaging almost always leads to horrible bass. And the same thing, like if you put a bass driver like a foot away from you, right? You may hear that one at what level of volume it's capable of, but one that's 4 feet away is not going to be at the same volume. And the smaller the driver, the more difficult it is for those drivers to create even sound throughout your room and your space. So in your situation, if you have a really large room and you already have really good drivers and nice subs, I would almost just go with bass shakers, because it is a psychoacoustic thing where when you feel that vibration, the sound you do hear sounds louder to you.
Right.
It is a psychoacoustic thing, but that it is what it is, man. Whenever I've listened to ones where they had them up, the bass shaking up a little too loud, and it was like, man, halfway through it was like, oh man, you guys mind if I turn this off? And we were all like, no, we're good.
Yeah, so I went to Jonathan's theater during the M Wave. They had the VIP theater tours, and he had near field 8s literally attached to the back of the seat.
Yeah.
Then he also had bass shakers. And then he had like 8 18s throughout the room. And I understand you're trying not to piss off the neighbors, so I'm with Paul here. Set up 2 regular subs and go with bass shakers. That would be my thoughts.
So is what happens is whenever you have these 8-inch drivers that are not capable of doing as much. I mean, unless these are like $5,000 8-inch drivers, you know, they're not going to be able to produce the same volume as a standard, even semi like $1,000 sub, right, or $500 sub, right? It because what the trade off is, the smaller you go, the more wattage you need to produce the same. I mean, we're talking like you would literally need, like, I'm just making up numbers now, like 6,000 watts RMS out of an 8-inch driver to do the same thing that a 500 watt RMS 15 would do. Like, you would literally need that much more wattage. So once you start placing these smaller subs that aren't as capable of as one bigger one, what normally, because the idea of multi-subs is you have one over here and one over here, and whatever this does, you have the equal volume all the way across, but you have nulls. Well, this sub over here is filling in those nulls. But if you have an 8-inch, even if they're close, because remember, unless they're literally on top of you, it's no different than if they're just scattered throughout the room. Yes, the closer they are, the more you're going to get that immediate SPL. But if you have one over here and then one over here, this one is going to be half the volume over here, because you've had to move this one so close. If you're not using them for literally just near field, this one is going to be, 6 dB hotter. And then where it has a null, this one's supposed to fill in, but since it's further away from you, oh, well, guess what? Even at its best, it's already 3 or 4 dB lower. So it's not really even good. It'll help, but it's not going to fill in like two fully capable subs, that are, filling the room with sound. It may not be pressurizing it, but, you're not dropping SPL like drastically. And 8-inch subs only generally go down to, like, gosh, you're talking 40, 50 hertz, which, like I said at the beginning here, like that's kind of the area that people love the kick. I don't know that I would get rid of your mains, I guess, if you were going to use that as a test. I mean, until you tested it, you really wouldn't know for sure, hey, is this a good solution for what I'm doing type of deal? I mean, you could do it and you could be like, dude, those guys are all wrong. This is amazing, because it's just one of those things where what I just mentioned would be what I would look out for, right? You're going to have all these little micro subs all over the place that's going to have a lot harder time producing SPL, because generally the smaller the sub, the harder it is to produce
Not
SPL.
only that, but you got to time align all of them and everything else too, right? I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, with
that many, I don't. Yeah. See, whenever you get the 4, in order for that to work, you have to put them in equilateral opposite positions of your room, and this is considering or assuming you have an acoustically complementary room space, aka a standard 8-foot ceiling, maybe 10 foot wide by 14 feet deep type of deal.
So here's the another thing, another suggestion.
The time alignment, the time alignment, and a lot of it is not just for, like, if you still need to do some.
Align them. It's just like it's just like your butt kickers. You got to time align them too, right? If you got them firing off before the bass hits, or if you got them firing off after the bass hits, it's not going to feel right. So another brand that I can turn you on to, Beefy, is Ike and I both have the same idea. The SVS in-wall, what are they, 9-inch? The SVS in-wall 9-inch, they're an enclosed box too, right? So that's what we thought about for
near
field.
They're duals, right?
Yeah, the duals. Yep.
Yeah. and put those in
Um,
your. Yeah, honestly, if you're just trying not to, if you like the way your system sounds, but you want to get that bass impact, especially if you're on concrete, I would go bass shakers.
yeah,
And
I
I
agree.
used to be totally against those things in the car audio days because they were so they were horrible when they first came out. I was like, oh my god, this is just like
Yeah,
horrible. Like you could
you
hear
can
them even.
definitely overdo it.
They didn't work quite the same as they do now, I guess.
Yeah,
But and literally just make them to where you barely notice them, right? That's the thing that people do. They use them and they're like, oh, let me crank this up. It's just, yeah, you're not gonna like it if you do that. You want to. The only reason you know they're there is because you installed them. That's the idea. And I think Jonathan, I forgot his podcast that him and Ryan do. He's gone over the bass shakers and the near
hmm
fields on one of their.
yeah. Go to his channel, Jonathan Von
On,
England or
yeah.
Von. You know,
It
go over
was
to his
him.
channel.
I think Chirpy was on, so it was him and yeah, Chirpy was on his channel going over bass shakers and near fields and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
and it's just like anything, right? You you buy rear surrounds. You want to hear the damn rear surrounds. You don't want to level match them, right? You know,
yeah,
I want to hear these damn things. I just paid five
yeah, I
hundred
know,
bucks for a
right?
pair, right?
Yeah,
And
that's the first thing people do. It's like, oh, I can't hear my Atmos. Let me turn them up plus 10 dB. It's
right,
like, yeah, you hear them, but that is not, that is
absolutely.
not the idea. But
Well,
yeah,
hopefully we
that's
were able to help you here, Beefy.
school of thoughts.
You,
But yeah, I mean, honestly, until you tried it, I mean, if you could return them or something like that, then I would.
hence the
That
SVS.
would
They have a
tough.
great return policy, right?
Yeah, well, that's
You know, they have a great returns uh, great return policy, so you could always try them if it doesn't do what you're looking for. You know,
yeah. Frankly, if
but my
it depends
suggestion
on
is if you're trying to keep
yeah,
sound away from the neighbors, that you're not pissing the neighbors off. Because look,
yeah.
I lived in an apartment at one time, and I literally had somebody. I literally had somebody come knocking on my door from downstairs, and they're like, "Man, it sounds like you're blowing up the building." And I said, "Look, man," I said, "come sit down," you know. And he sat down. He's like, "Man, it don't sound like nothing like it does downstairs. I mean, it was just reverberating all through the walls and all down the stairs and everything else like that." I said, "See, I don't even have it that loud." He said, "All right." I said, "Look, just let me know. I can always turn it down. Here's my number. Just text me, or whatever. I don't mind."
Yeah.
So, and then
Yeah.
this guy actually started coming up and watching movies. So,
Then he was like, "Turn it up." Yeah, that's how it works, right?
yeah,
You're
yeah.
like,
So, all right. So we got
yeah,
all our equipment
uh,
hooked up, Paul. We're ready to take our first measurement. Take us
okay.
through
So
what we're looking for and what we're going to do. This is REW, and it's a
the
free
first thing,
software.
yeah, the first thing that I do, which you don't have to do, is I run the test tone that's built into the receiver, and I run this SPL meter here, and I level match whatever that test tone is. That way, and how you do that is in your measurement here, like mine. This is defaulted at, excuse me, some level, but it's always wrong. Um, so I do that. That way, my audio that's received. A lot of people don't do that. You don't
So you're
necessarily
talking
have.
about if I have a Denon or a Marantz,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about the wop 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 that
Well,
comes out of it,
there should be some pink noise.
or pink noise.
There should be a level matching pink noise
Okay.
and you run that, and as while you're running, like you do that on one channel, and you pull up this meter and you see whatever that volume is, right?
Okay.
So if it's um because this is what'll happen. Everything has its own output and input level. So this is a way that I verify that, okay, I have my mic. You can either change it in here, or you can change your input mic. If it has input level of your mic, you can lower that, the sensitivity of that, or the gain, if you would, to match whatever the receiver is. That way, I just do that because, hey, if I'm at negative 20 and it's playing at, 60 dB, I want my U mic to read 60 dB, you
So
know.
my first question is, and I'm by far, I've only read stuff. I've not used REW myself. I've read a lot of times that you have to import a calibration file. Is that correct? Do we need to do that before we do this?
Yeah, you definitely need to do that. And it's what that is you basically, when you open REW, the first thing it's going to do when you plug the mic, when you have the mic in, and it's the first time, it'll say, oh, you have U mic 1. Would you like to use, do you have a calibration file? And you say yes. And that calibration file is like right here. And you have, with, you get it off of their website, and you have to type in their serial number. It's batched. Uh, um, Calibration files. So like they test, and people don't realize that it's pretty damn accurate. Even a batched, people are like, oh, it's not perfect. It's like, dude, your human ear cannot hear
Right.
the difference. Now because I used to have to measure very specific load coils and capacitors with an oscilloscope supplying a very specific voltage to a component. We're talking one of the individual components, to see if it was within tolerance, and it had to be like within 0.01 or something like that. This was for a missile guidance system, so it had to be, pretty damn accurate. So, and I literally had to measure each one and document each and every one of the. I hated that job. I mean, it was very advanced, but I hate repetitive stuff. I can't.
Right.
I can't stand. Um. Anyways, so this is the calibration file, and you have a 90-degree one and a regular one, and the difference is the way the mic is shaped and stuff. With the barrel, the 90-degree one's here, and the direct on one, if you're pointing it at a speaker, you would use the standard one. Or if you're doing any RTA, like if you have your mic, let's just pretend this is the mic, and you're pointing it at a speaker, and you're doing an RTA, and you're, just measuring on average, you would use the straight on one. Just because of the way the barrel of the mic is, it has a different curve of calibration on it.
So for the most part, you're going to set your mic stand up in your seating position, and you're going to do it vertically, which would be the 90 degrees, correct?
If you're doing single point measurements and you're using a mic stand, straight up, you would use the 90-degree file.
So first thing you want to do is check to make sure that you have the proper calibration file. And you said you can pull those from the website, right? And then you just download it onto your computer.
Yeah, there's a very specific location, and it's always hard to find. I will tell you that. You almost have to Google it, and it'll pull it up.
Okay.
But it'll be where the mic is, like on their website, and you have to scroll down, and then there's like a calibration file, and you have to input your serial number to get the correct calibration file. And the serial number's on the mic. Omni mic, I think, sends you, or you have to download it as well, but it's very, I think those are individually calibrated.
Okay.
So yeah, once you do that, you do have to come in here and tell it which audio device. So you're gonna want, once you plug in your into your receiver, it'll show up like the model number of your receiver, or it like on when you use the HDMI adapter, it might say HDMI output or something like that, and that's how you'll output to your receiver.
Okay.
And then if you have a stereo plugged in, you'll have left, right, center, LFE, left surround, right surround, rear, back, left or left back, right back. So you'll have all that show up here, and then there's the loop back. Don't worry, you really don't have to do anything with that. You just leave it alone. That's for more. That's whenever you get into the more advanced stuff like phase alignment, and it is more accurate for time alignment as well if you use XLR. But most people aren't going to do that, to be honest. So you're just using a USB mic, which you're just going to use acoustic time alignment in that case, which is kind of like a best effort, which is set up when you select your measurement. This will say no time alignment at first. I always use acoustic time alignments, and you might have to up this. You can run a test, and it'll oh man, that's in the way. It'll
Can you hide that thing that says?
I don't remember.
Yeah,
Oh,
that one. Can you just press hide?
Yep.
There we go.
There's a hide button there. And then this right here, I always recommend leaving that on. You'll get a chirp before and after every measurement. You'll get a choop, choop.
So go back to that drop down again. What's the difference in the choices?
Well, no timing is obvious. Use loop back as timing. That means you would have an XLR, and you would have a reference output in, like you would have a loop back in your own system. So you would have one channel going into itself,
right?
And what it does is it says, okay, whatever that delay is, maybe it's like 0.01 milliseconds or something like that. It's like, okay, that's my reference. Compared to when and it's actually probably more than that. It's probably like 10 milliseconds or something like that, going through all your USB and all that stuff, and it'll loop back, and it'll take that and say, okay, that's my 0 point. And it's the only real accurate way to do it. And then it'll have your it'll figure out the difference in your reference speaker and the mic, and say, okay, whatever this took versus the loop back, that's your how far you are away, and it's like a more exact, true time alignment. No one does that, to be honest. Most people don't do that, but that's the only way that you're really going to get real accurate timing references. But again, you don't have to be exact in this stuff. Everybody thinks you do, but it's like you can get everything absolutely perfect and then go, oh, now everything's off. As opposed to perfect.
Right.
So and that's just the kind of the same thing. Use loopback as cal and timing reference. This is you wouldn't really do this whenever you're doing external USB mic, especially, or even XLR, because it's taking your system, playing a sound, and then whenever it loops back to itself, it's taking the difference, knowing, hey, I just made this perfect. I just gave you a perfectly flat line, and I just read on the loop back, you have some dips and valleys here. and it'll create a calibration type of file. So it'll negate any audio discrepancies in your equipment here.
Okay.
But again, this isn't an exact science. It's audio.
Right.
Your room is going to negate all that stuff anyways, so we really don't worry about that. I mean, this
So
is
use acoustic timing. That's going to be like your decay time and stuff like that, correct?
yeah, that's what all these are for, is
Mhm.
for doing any timing reference stuff. They're all the same, but the others are more accurate. You would only be doing that if you're, designing an actual theater where you're going to have the $700 audio SoundForge like audio program to
Right.
do all this stuff in that anyway. So you wouldn't be using REW. So
Okay.
I have a feeling this is like a experience testing, and a lot of this stuff probably gets put into some of this more expensive softwares. But what a lot of companies do, they'll have something like this as freeware, and you have a lot of users and a lot of engineers and audio engineers that are hobbyists that may be very technical, and they'll give feedback or say, hey, we want this, or we need this, or hey, this is broken, and then they adopt that into
Mhm.
a package that may be a completely different software. So acoustic timing reference, which is what most people will be using, is basically you're getting the timing out of one of your speakers, and then it's going to that'll be your reference, and then it'll start to sweep out of whatever speaker you're testing, and then it'll tell you, oh, okay, you're this much further away or closer, just based off of the acoustic delay that's measured from your mic. But again, that's not compensating for any delay. You're assuming that your computer, which it's not true, has a perfect clock and everything is always absolutely perfect, which isn't the case. But again, it doesn't really matter. It's close enough, right? So that's what acoustic timing reference is, and you don't need any other equipment. You just need the USB mic. For these other ones, you need to have XLR. You have to have like an XLR, like a Fosse external DAC type of deal with mic
Okay.
input.
All right. So this is just to check to make sure that the levels match.
Yep. That way, and you will turn this up or down, and then okay, I'm at 20. It's the same level that the system is outputting, etc.
Okay.
You don't, unless some people don't even do that. But the problem is this might be so hot, it might be up at like -5 or at 0 or something, and then like you'll be at -30, and you'll actually be playing like 90 dB or recording 90 dB at what should be 50 dB sound levels.
Right. So
But it's all relative, right? It's
you
all
go to
relative.
your receiver, you play the pink noise, and then you're looking right here at this level.
Well, so the level match, the first thing you do, you play the pink noise and you pull up this SPL meter and you
Okay.
read it. Okay, you're done there. Okay, hey, I'm at -20. I read this, whatever the SPL is that it should read, which would be whatever.
Which I think the Denon and the Marantz like you to match at 75 dB. That's what winds up being there in the green. Let's call it when you're doing the SPL.
Yeah, so that's the some receivers like mine, you can adjust the volume, right?
Mhm.
Like whenever you play the pink noise, whatever your volume is, that's what the volume of the pink. When you're level matching, not when it's doing its test tone. That's
Right.
always at like that's why you got to leave the room, because it's like. But whenever you're just level matching, and it's doing the generator, normally the volume will control that, and then so you just whatever you do, if you do it at 0, that's fine. Then what you'll do is you'll come here and then you'll select speaker calibration, because that'll be roughly the same frequency that it does for level matching, and then you'll hit play, and then it'll be sitting there doing a test tone. It'll be just like the noise coming out of your receiver, and then you'll come back to this while it's doing, and you'll sit there and adjust this accordingly.
Okay.
And it's how you do that is you adjust it here, right? So like I'll be sitting here playing peak noise, and then I'm reading this, right? And then I'll sit there and I'll adjust this until I get it to where it's like, oh, okay, that's the same volume. So then I'll stop that, and then I'll stop this, and then I will have to come in here separately and adjust this one. They're two separate ones, but it's
Okay.
that's how you know. And again, you don't have to do that as long as you play a sweep and it's playing at a higher. You don't have to do that. As long as, because like I said, it's all relative. As long as you're a good at least 10 dB above your noise floor. And this little thing, when you do a check level, it'll let you know, right? So, like if I'm really quiet here, I think the mic is picking up, but I don't have the speakers on because I'll get feedback because I'm on.
Right.
Unless you mute this one.
Let's not mess with
it. Yeah. So anyway, so then, and that's just what I do. You don't have to do that. But then what you do is you sit there and you tell it. Normally you just want to do 20 to 20,000 hertz or 24,000, right? Or 20, 10 to 20 or 0 to 20,000 hertz. If you're doing any kind of time alignment, it's better to just do the full frequency sweep, even if you're just doing like a sub. It's just something to do with the calculations and how they calculate how the math works inside the application. I don't even know how or why it's different, but if you change this to different frequencies, you'll get widely varying timing references. So just generally just 0 to 20,000 or whatever. I don't even know why this is at 22. That's an odd number. So then you just, you check your levels, you make sure you'll hear it, it'll make a sound, and then it'll say okay, or you'll get some warning down here, which usually means you're either too low, which doesn't necessarily mean you're too low here. It might be, hey, you need to turn the volume up on your stereo. Like if you're trying to do this at like -40, it's going to say, hey, the background noise is equal to the pink noise. I can't differentiate that. So
Okay.
I'm not able to give you, and it'll tell you a message here. It'll say, hey, noise floor or level too low, or it'll say too high, clipping. It'll let you know when it clips.
So you shouldn't just automatically set your AVR processor. You shouldn't automatically just set that to reference.
You can, but again, that's where you're definitely going to want to adjust this. Because if you don't adjust this and you're doing it at 0, yeah, you might instantly start to get clipping.
Okay.
And if you do know, you have to, just level match your whatever your input, because it could be your mic gain's too high. It could be, whatever. But here's your, it's kind of like, it's the same question as, what do you do? Turn up the sub volume, or do you turn it up in your AVR? It's all the same. 1.5 dozen,
right.
So, but you have to eventually have it to where, hey, it's not too hot in overall, or you'll measure clipping. So then you hit measure on the new software. This software is amazing. I love the feature that it does here. You can do sequential channels, and you literally just select it. Like if you have all these things, and whatever order you select them in is the order that it will measure them, and you can say, hey, 1 second delay in between, delay 15 seconds for the start so you can get out of the room. There's some cool, this for people that's done a lot of measurements, I love that feature. It's amazing. So I can do all 7 bed layers just by hitting one button, walk out of the room, and then come back in a couple minutes.
So previously on the old version, you were only to do
Yeah,
one channel at a time.
you had to sit there and do a measurement, change channel,
Okay.
do another measurement, change the channel, do another measurement, and it was like, oh man, this is getting tedious.
Right.
so,
Yeah. So that's awesome that they implemented that
oh yeah,
into the.
and you can add the notes here, so you can add number. Here's the name, like it'll be, you give it a name, whatever it is, and then it'll add a number to the end. You can add notes, and whenever you do the sequential, it'll add these notes to each one of them. But whenever you do use it as entered, right, it'll enter this name, but it will see how it shows right here what it's will appear as RJBL.
So I'd imagine that's the right JBL.
Yeah, so this will be left JBL, right? And then you can just have test one, right? And that'll be a note, and the notes will appear down in the bottom. And I'll open up a measurement here, and then it'll do that. You can turn off the right and left if you or the channel, but I don't know why you would do that.
Yeah.
But it's just easier to keep track of. So that's what this button does here, left to right. See how the left and the right disappear?
Yep.
So that's pretty much all there is to that, right? And then you
All right. Up at the top, you can toggle between sweep and noise. So the sweep is what you're doing the range for, right? It's going to do a frequency range from 0 to 22,000 hertz, right? And then the pink noise, the other one is just straight pink noise. Or can you not change that?
This is a sweep, right? So that's what this will do, and that sweep is whatever the starting frequency. That's what this is. This it's grayed out for me right now. I'm not even sure why, but that's just I'm assuming you could do different noise things, but you don't
noise and
need that. No, because see, you don't use that here. If you're doing that, that's what the generator is for.
Okay.
Generator is for your periodic pink noise, your white noise, or your random pink noise, your periodic pink noise, and your full range. You could even say very specific. You could say custom range, right? So this will be, it'll be pink, random pink noise, and you can tell it where to cut, right? And then you can tell it, what filter type, which I forget what these filter types are. No, this is, like I said, this is where you're getting into this super uber, even more stuff than I ever really use. I never use this stuff even.
Right.
This, I forget. My dad might know what that does off the top of his head, but not me. Most of the time, you just do your full range, right?
Right.
And it'll give you your pink noise, you hit play, and it'll, like I said, the speaker calibration here is what it does level matching wise. And the reason that they do that is so it cuts out your, this is a good reference for cutting out your transition frequency where your room takes control of your sub bass, so it plays above 500 hertz, and then it also is playing below where you get a lot of your reflections in your higher frequencies that might be amplified. So that's why it's a narrow band, and you'll hear this will sound just like what your system is playing. They do that on purpose just because, hey, we're just trying to level match, like kind of in that voice vocal range.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to take out the room and any excessive reverberations from higher frequencies. So that's what you would do, again, to do your level matching that we were talking about earlier.
All right.
This is where you would do all your playing of your noises, and you can do multi-tones, which you can test for different things for uh, like distortion, like if you're playing like multiple tones, multiple phase tones for testing distortion and stuff like that. And obviously you could do, this is a good way to blow up a speaker. You can do straight sine waves, basically just float your speaker. You know, you can, no matter how awesome the speaker is, you can sit there and just do a constant, 20 hertz, and that coil will eventually give out.
Overheat.
Yeah, it doesn't take much, especially
Right.
if you're doing it high SPL. So you got to be careful. You don't want to just be sitting there, oh, hey, listen to this. It's like, oh, that's awesome. It's like, yeah, it's made to that. Again, this is the physical energy that it's doing. Hard, like
Right.
that is the voltage that it's sending, constant. Which you would look at this noise here and think, oh, well, that's so much more. But see how it's changing. There's tons of little micro rests in between there, as opposed to this. It's literally, oh, I'm voltage and I'm full voltage right here. Where that other one, yeah, it shows like all those squigglies right here. But again, that's a resting voltage right here. So you're hitting 0,000 more times in this one little, section here, versus this is just a constant tone.
Right.
And that's, a lot of people don't understand that. It has nothing really to do with the speaker or anything. It's just, that's an electronic thing. It's like you're sending voltage through a wire, and through a magnet. So that's why you got to be careful when you're doing just straight tones, even test tones where you have a test CD or something like that. The old bass CDs, it's like, hey, may damage speakers. Yeah, that's true if it's just a tone. But a lot of those were multi-tones, so it would, turn the voltage off. You have a couple different dips there that it was doing to produce the multiple tones and frequencies, as opposed to just holding one frequency
Right.
at a specific voltage.
So we're ready to measure.
Finally. Yeah. Most people just turn it on and start measuring. Boop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're ready to measure. We chose all our settings.
Show things. Now you have to set your AVR. You want to turn off all your EQ. You want to turn off all your all your like volume compensation or dynamic EQ,
Yep.
because this will measure all that, and if you're trying to compensate for that, it's gonna mess everything up. You know what I'm saying? If you're trying to get rid of a plus 10 dB bump on your bass because you have dynamic EQ on, well, you're negating it 20 dB by the time dynamic EQ is turned off. So you got to be, you got to make sure that you're assuming straight perfect signal. If you were to just take the speaker output and put it directly into the input of your device,
So almost like direct mode in your AVR. So
yeah, but you can't use direct mode per se because it'll turn it to 2-channel type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to turn off all your, essentially, you want to turn off all your extra stuff.
If you ran all the seat, turn it off.
Now, that's not to say that that'll give you your baseline, right? That's how you get a baseline. And you want a baseline, right? So then you can turn that back on and then measure again and see what it's doing.
Right.
Then you actually get to see, oh, this is what that's doing. And it teaches you. That's what it does. Like you may not know, like, oh, well, what does this do? What does bass boost do, right? And you're like, I like it. I don't know what it does. And then you realize, oh, all it's really doing is giving a 3 dB bump at 60 hertz. Really? What? Oh man. And then
Right.
okay, that's what I like. So let me see if I have any measurements. So once you get that set up, then
Your
you hit
2,000 measurements that you got. All right, let me
yeah.
see if
Then
I have
uh,
any.
I don't even know how many this one has. I think it tells you how many in here. I am curious. Let's see. I think it tells you. And I've
3581 measurements made.
oh, and that's just with this software.
That's
I
up.
use other people's remotely. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot. Gosh, that's a lot more than what I thought. Okay. Anyway.
So Paul's pastime is REW. If you, so we do have an expert here.
That's just scratching the surface, to be honest. Uh, so that is funny. That's a lot more than it was last time I looked at that number. By about like, god damn, what?
What are you gonna do tonight? I'm REW in it, man.
Yeah, yeah, man. I'm the REW bar. um, that's where Fred's at. he's he's well over 1,000. I know that. Fred will know what that means. So then you hit measure start, and then it does your stuff. Let's see, what do I have? Do I have any? Um,
Do you have any?
I don't know if these are the. I don't know if any of them have. Here we go. Let's see here. Yeah, this will work. Okay. So then this is what it'll look like, and people will be like, "Oh my God, what? That's horrible!" Blah 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 blah. That is what audio does. Everybody is like, "Oh my God, that is like just crazy! Like, look at all that." But the reality is what people do, especially when they're sharing measurements. They'll go here, go to action,
Smoothing.
and you do psychoacoustic or you do variable smoothing. Okay, variable smoothing is really more than sufficient, and is what psychoacoustic is basically what it is exactly what it is. Perceivably, this is what you're hearing.
Okay.
People are like, "Oh, don't use that. Use 1/12 or 1/6 smoothing at the most, right?" But really, variable smoothing is what I use most of the time, and is what that does is it basically does psychoacoustic smoothing in your everything but your bass region. So it doesn't do any smoothing there. So you get to see what your room is controlling versus, hey, there's really not much you can do about. You can do some EQing on your speakers, but you're not going to be able to get rid of all these little wiggles. That's just, it's not possible unless you're in an anechoic chamber. So then you hit apply smoothing, and then you basically, oh, that's what you're actually listening to, if you would. So
Okay.
and then you can just do 20 to 20,000 hertz, right? So these are all my speakers right here.
All right. So let's talk about the key on the bottom and the key on the left hand side. So on the left hand side is the actual SPL of the graph, right?
Yes.
So that's the actual decibel output, and on the bottom is frequency.
Yes.
All right.
And then I think, let me do something here. Oops. Let me change something. View. Show. Trace. I don't remember where it's at. There is a way that maybe it's on that main screen. Um, let me. It might be over here somewhere that I don't remember. Because you can turn on a thing where it'll show you what each one of these ranges are, basically. It might be over here. Oh man, see, I updated and I think it turned that off. Control, show, frequency bands. Here we go. Ooh, there we go. I knew it was somewhere here. Okay. So that's up here in the controls. You hit show frequency bands.
Okay.
And it makes you sound smarter if you're never doing this. If you've never done this, I don't even notice that. But then you'll know, oh, here's the mid range, right? Oh, here's the upper range. Here's presence. Here's brilliance. Here's bass. Here's low mids. And here's sub bass, right? So, and that's that just gives you a reference. Now, this is what REW chose to do here. There's no hard, fast rule. Back in my day, as you notice here, it's 60 hertz. Just for ease. Oh, shoot. Oops, I clicked a button. Back in my day, just for simplicity, we said 50 hertz and below was sub bass. 50 to 500 was bass. 500 to 5,000 was mid, and then 5,000 to 20,000 was high.
So let me ask you on this measurement, and someone let me know that the mics were a little low, so I turned them up. But if we're too loud,
okay. I'm probably over here falling asleep because this is boring, right?
No,
I'm
you're
not
actually
measuring something.
You actually got my attention pretty good. But so let me ask you this: this is your combination of all these speakers here, left, right, center.
Yeah, this is all SPLs right here that I have on
So
here.
you turned in essentially you turned off all the EQ, everything from your receiver.
Yes.
And then these are just natural crossovers from the speaker, correct?
Well, no. I did multiple measurements on here, and that's why I've got a label. And is what I'll do is I'll show you an example. So, clear selections. Here's my left speaker. This is left JBL through. This is no EQ, no nothing. But then I have a left JBL natural. That's the EQ, the natural EQ that it did. You notice it really didn't do much there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got JBL left front EQ. And then I've got, there should be one more.
JBL flat.
Flat. Boom. And now look, the difference right there. That did something. So these other EQs, at least on the YPOW, because the YPOW kind of sucks. People know that. I joke about it being amazing, but it is very limited. It only has like 7 bands, and they're kind of fixed frequency bands. But as you can tell, the flat actually improved this speaker by quite a bit. You see it right here.
Yep.
Like it brought the frequency range all the way out here.
So what did you do to make it change that?
This is just the built-in, like running Odyssey, having it on or off. Then,
Okay.
Omaha, it has 3 different frequency bands that it automatically creates. It's exactly through means off, so straight through. Then there's natural, flat, and front. And that's the 3 different EQs that YPOW has. And as
So
you can see,
you take the slider and go back towards 0 frequency?
0?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess my question was, obviously your left speaker is not going to play, you know, infrasonic, right? So how if you just did a through, how is it not playing? It should have some kind of a crossover in the speaker, right? That stops it from playing those lower
Yeah,
frequencies.
when you turn off the EQs, you're not turning off the your high pass. You can, if you do an initial, you can do full range if you want. If you're trying to figure out what your best crossover frequency would be. But this is with my 80 hertz crossover frequency still running, but these
Okay,
speakers also don't produce sound below 75 hertz. So
right. So the natural crossover would pick up, and that's built into the speaker, and it should cut them off from playing. Correct?
um,
Playing at those low frequencies.
if you have it turned on in your receiver and you have them set to small or not large and you set the crossover frequency, that's the only way it's going to stop it from producing the lower frequencies. Unless you have some special device or it's an active speaker that has a limiter built into it. And most speakers, a passive speaker does not. It will literally play through the speaker 20 hertz through 20,000. Now, this speaker, even if I had this crossover turned off, would look probably exactly the same because the speaker, even though it's getting that signal, it just can't produce it.
Right.
The coil's getting it. And if you just constantly try to give it 20 hertz, or in that range, it just wouldn't. It would just you'd never hear anything.
Right.
It's not capable of playing it at a volume that is perceivable compared to what the rest of the speaker does. So, I mean, all speakers play all frequencies. It's just whether or not it's audible.
Right.
So, I mean, you could sit there and see it moving if you were playing like 4 hertz. It would be like, you would see it, but you wouldn't, or not 4, but, like 30 hertz. Like if I was playing 30 or 40 hertz to that speaker, you could see that speaker maybe moving, but it's not. It doesn't have enough excursion to really give it volume. That this is a very specific design speaker, so
Okay.
it's designed to have more output within the range that it does produce. Which, if you look, it is an actual very narrow frequency. Technically, this is only going to about 10K. This speaker that I have, which I absolutely love this speaker. Anyway, so yeah, there is a crossover. I didn't say or mention that, but yeah, you wouldn't necessarily turn off your crossover. You could just run it at 80 hertz, which most people do. You can turn it off or turn it lower and kind of mess with that to
Right.
see. You can
Depending
change that.
upon what your speaker's capable of.
Yeah, you can see how that affects your.
If you got if you got JTRs and they got 10-inch 10-inch woofers mid range, and
Mhm.
you can obviously drop your crossover. Now, so let's talk about that, because Jeff uses some, I mean, super expensive crossovers in his speakers, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I guess my question is, if you opened up your AVR, you turned all your crossovers off, you let the full signal go through, and that speaker that Jeff applied his crossover in, it should work the same as turning on that particular crossover in your AVR, correct?
No, not at all. Um, the crossover in your AVR is a high pass filter. Most speakers, unless they're active, do not have a high pass filter.
Okay.
The physical characteristics of the speaker is a limitation, aka a just it's not a crossover, but it's not producing that sound. It's just not producing it. It's not normally crossed over. There's normally not a high pass crossover, because that's what that is. That's you're cutting out the low and passing everything above it. Higher than this frequency let through. A speaker does not have that unless it's an active speaker. I believe SVS subwoofers have a high pass in their subs, but that's at like, if it produces, if it's 25 to 200 hertz, like PB, 1000, like I have, there's a high pass filter in there to protect the driver. So it's not doing that, which speakers normally do not have that. So there's nothing there to protect it. It doesn't damage it normally. Under normal conditions, it does not damage a speaker. It's just not physically capable of doing it. It's no different than if you're yelling, right, and then you're doing this. I'm talking the same volume, but I have, it's totally different. That's what a speaker, that's where speaker design comes into, and it gets really complex. There's trade-offs. So is what happens just because you have a big driver in a speaker like this speaker right here. It has a 10-inch mid driver and a 1-inch true compression horn. It's capable of 96 dB sensitivity, true sensitivity. This is a commercial speaker. It doesn't produce below 75 hertz by design because they want the 75 to the 10K to be 96 dB sensitive. That's why. Where if I lowered the sensitivity, change the cabinet a little bit, sure, I might be able to get down to 40 hertz with a 10-inch driver, right? It's a 10-inch driver, and it is not capable of producing below 75 hertz. So
Okay.
it's all on what you're trying to accomplish with the design of the speaker. So, but this is purpose built that way because people that get this speaker, you're adding subs, and I know you're going to cross over at least 80 hertz, more than likely. So, yeah, it makes sense not to waste your time producing below 75 hertz. You got a little wiggle room just to, let them, cross over, but you're still high pass it in the AVR at 80 hertz. But yeah, no, your speaker normally now
So the crossover in the speakers just serially designed
that's the sub. We're talking the sub only.
Okay.
Now, yes, the mid range, yes, it has a high pass in it, so it definitely does.
Okay.
So it's playing everything above, like, let's just say 200 hertz or whatever it has, but it's also playing all the way up to 2000 hertz or
right.
20,000.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at with the speaker.
It doesn't produce, the mids do not produce at any volume. Some of them will have low and high pass filters, but the more crossover function you built into something, the more delay you're adding, the more you can get some combing. You can get some weird anomalies. But, if you, have again, like a JTR speaker, it has a very expensive crossover in it. So they're accounting for all of these anomalies that are happening. Right.
So when you got a three-way speaker, there's essentially three types of crossovers in there: the high pass, the low pass, and then one for the mid range. Correct?
Yep. And yes, exactly. And that's what I tell people. The quick and dirty is the best way to and most accurate is one driver. But that you can't produce any volume necessarily. And people would argue, and I'll be like, no, I'm telling you, headphones, one driver per ear produces the full frequency range at, if you buy a decent pair of headphones, $1,000 or above, perfectly flat, right? That's one driver. There's no crossovers, there's no nothing, right? But now you add, okay, I want two people to hear in a room. Well, you can't just have one speaker produce, all these frequencies, right? Because the driver's not close enough. You're losing, volume as you step away and stuff like that. So that's where you start producing speakers that have different drivers to be dedicated to be able to, hey, I'm going to be dedicated to drive this frequency range. But then once you do that, anytime any two frequencies are reproduced at the same time in a speaker, you get basically a 6 dB bump. So then you have to figure out, okay, well, how do I get rid of that bump? Okay, well, let's do a crossover and, get a speaker that naturally only plays at this frequency and cut it off. It is very, very complicated. Speaker design is very, very complicated. Because you're dealing with physics, electronics, and then also, human perception, which is probably the most difficult of all of the things.
All right, so I sidetracked you there. I apologize.
Yeah.
So we took our measurement. So what are we looking at here? Tell us what we're looking at.
So basically, we're just looking at, roughly, you're looking at my left speaker right now, and this is how I actually play it, right? And again, if I just wanted to be, bougie and say, hey, what do I actually hear? I'll just play psychoacoustic, right? So this is kind of what I'm hearing out of this system. So it's relatively flat. And again, you can go out here or in, right, to flatten this out. A lot of people will do that, right? They'll be like, oh, let me just flatten this out. Look at this. Oh, look at how flat that is. Oh my God.
So
but
we're looking at 60 hertz. It's playing about 85 decibels, correct?
Yeah.
84 decibels.
Yep.
And that can also be adjusted by the volume being turned up and turned on your actual AVR, right?
Yeah, so is what you normally would do, right, is you would go over here if you want to know, okay, let's see, what is this speaker doing at what I'm actually listening to, right? And I would say, okay, at the level that I listen to, or what this speaker is capable of, right, which is right around here, 80 to 10,000 hertz, right? And then this will just tell you the 80 to 10,000 hertz, I've got a negative 0.78 dB per octave, a span of plus 3.6, minus 3.7, which is pretty good, actually.
So, for those of us that have no effing idea what that means, what does that mean?
So what that means is every doubling of frequency, I'm going down 0.7 dB in volume, if you would. So I have a downward, as you can see by these red lines. So these red lines, basically, anything within here is like considered like ideal, if you would. As you can see, I'm a little bit high here, a little bit low there, a little bit low here. But within this line, humanly perceivable is not noticeable within this line. People that listen and train and hear all day, sure, you might be able to do this or hear some of this differences, but you would literally only if you were familiar with the room. I'll just say that.
Okay. And
Like,
and how did you? Because I just saw you draw those two red lines. What did you do to actually do that?
so what you do is you click, you hold the shift down, and then you scroll, and then you let go of your mouse button and the
Okay.
shift, and then that'll give you a calculation of your. A lot of people don't do this
Yeah.
or
For
do that.
for a freeware, this software is super intuitive. I mean, it's. I'm sure you can go
It's
into the weeds as much as you want with this, right?
not. It's not that intuitive. I will tell you that.
Really?
For someone, yeah, it. There's so much training on this online that's like legitimate training, and they're actually, thoughtfully thought out processes and flows that obviously we're not doing here. We're just like two dudes talking. But it's to be honest, from someone that does a lot of stuff, it's not that intuitive. Once you get familiar with it, yes, it is. It's great software, but for someone that doesn't know where to go, doesn't know what to do, it doesn't have. It's not bad,
It's not
but
user
it's
friendly.
yeah. There you go. So that's
So it
which
kind of
means
reminds me of a
yeah,
comparison, right? You got the Lumagen processor that you need to know where you're going and what you're doing in each category compared to the Mad VR.
yeah,
It just
yeah,
gives you a nice,
yeah,
nice
yeah.
user friendly GUI, you know,
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely for
a
a
tweaker.
semi-advanced
Yeah.
someone that already kind of knows audio, knows what they're looking at. Like, like I said, it's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. It's great. It's an amazing software. But someone that kind of knows what they're doing, I guess. You go into certain spots, you're like, wait, how the hell do I do that? What the hell? But it's improved quite a lot. Like this is it has improved over time, and it keeps improving, which is amazing. So it's I, and I only say that not because I'm saying bad things about it. I'm just saying if you use it, don't get frustrated. It's not you. There are some things in here that the workflow mentally isn't quite there for your average Joe. Like if you're more super technical, it may actually feel, oh yeah, this makes more sense, this workflow or this. But for someone I'm kind of a cross between both. As an actual engineer, I'm way more social than most of the people that I work with. Most engineers
Right.
have zero social skills. So I'm a little bit, my user experience is a little bit different, so I'm an oddball. So it's yeah, it's not necessarily intuitive, and there's so many people that any forum you ask a question and they'll tell you. Now you have to take everything with a grain of salt because everybody thinks that they walk on water with any opinion when it comes to audio. So it's
Right.
one of those. Like someone would look at this and say, "Oh man, you don't even go to 20,000 hertz," and then not realizing, most humans don't even hear above, actual room in a room. You don't hear above 16K, even though I'm pretty low on that, right? But I myself, I don't like, and the
I mean,
Harman
you don't want
curve.
to get those new speakers that have the diamond coating on them that go to 40,000, 40,000.
Yeah, yeah. Oh God, no, not at all, not at all, not at all. So, But that's this, and then I don't know if I even did my bass in this one. I probably didn't. Let me look.
So we're looking at this measurement. It's just telling us, okay, this speaker is relatively flat across all the frequencies up to 20K or 16K, like you said.
Yeah.
And the question is, are we looking for a flat response? Are we looking for a boosted response in certain areas? Do
That
you want to do
that
the Harman smiley face curve, right?
that oh that's to me like I know to me that's preference. That's what do you like? And unless you know what you like or what you don't like, then you don't know what you're trying to target. And that's the thing about this software. It can teach you what you like, right? So, because you'll like, oh, I think that sounds better. And you'll listen to it and you'll be like, oh man, I'm like plus 10 dB over here at 18K. And that's perfectly fine. There is there's no one stop shop, no, oh, this is the right way, that's the right way. But if you're like, oh, I have a hard time hearing dialogue, and not just because you listen to Tenet, dude, just because, hey, every
Because I
movie,
have no treatment in my rooms.
yeah, yeah, every, if you, oh, gosh damn it, that's a new feature. Double clicking it does something here. Like if you had like a big, like if this mid range was down here, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's why that is. Oh, I wonder if I can EQ that, or you
Yeah,
might
that
look
was going to be my next question. So look at the 2K response there, right? I guess
at
it's just a little bit right before the 2K. You're down about 5 dB compared to the 700. Um, so what do I do to correct that? Do I go to my AVR? How do I go? Because obviously this isn't like a DSP, right? It's just a measurement, so you can't do the auto corrections in this, right?
yep.
So how do I actually correct that?
So you can either EQ, but normally, so it depends. If you look up the specs on your speaker, and if my crossover is right at 2K, don't touch it. It's just part of the speaker. It's
Okay.
that's what it's going to sound like. uh, if you take multiple measurements in the room in different locations, so this is just point sourced measurement here. Oh, I'm on the through one. I should be on the flat one. If you measure it in different spots, you may just have like a suck out in your room or something. For lower ends, for higher ends, generally it's pretty much the same as soon as you pull away from the speaker. It's just the characteristics of the speaker. There's certain things that you can EQ out, right? You can look at it, you can see, oh, okay, yeah, I've got a little bit of a dip here, right? And you can try to go in and EQ that up, right? You want to be careful if you're EQing up. You only really want to do, I wouldn't do more than 6 dB boost anywhere, and you would want a pretty wide Q if you're doing that. But I don't know that I would actually do that. And if you're doing something like that, you do have to have a speaker that's capable of taking EQ. And that's where a lot of people are like, oh, you need all this overkill. You need a 110 dB sensitive speaker, because in some of those you can, you have more room to boost without it distorting. But if your speaker's already pushing the limit to produce if you're sitting 20 feet away from a speaker that's 83 dB sensitive, your amp's maxed out, and you're trying to, boost a frequency that you have a big wide null in, that means you're boosting that up to where that section is going to be distorting anyways. So
Right.
A lot of this stuff, you generally use EQ. I don't have, again, because of the wipeout, I don't have an advanced EQ system. So I just live with this. It's perfectly fine. I don't know that you would ever know that there's a, and technically, like I said, because remember, this is a slope. So it's not, you're not really looking at, this right here is, because everything's relative to this line, right? Not relative to the highest point.
Okay.
Because that's kind of how we hear psychoacoustically. So even if this was like straight down, like at a 45, now that would be a pretty interesting speaker, but someone might like that sound, right? So really, this is only 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's right at about 4 or 5, like you said, 5 dB down. That's hardly audible. Generally, anything within this line is not audible.
Okay. So let's say you had
point.
Let's say you had a suck out in your room that, for some reason, at 2K, you know, obviously when you're doing subwoofer measurements, you're going to see a little bit more than this. But let's say you had a 10 dB drop at 2K.
Well, you're not generally going to have a suck out anything above the transition frequency. So when you're talking about suck outs and stuff like that, that's only going to be below your transition frequency. Okay. You're not going to have a suck out above the transition frequency. That's just going to be the sound of the speaker. You either toe the speaker in, toe the speaker out, or do EQ. That's pretty much your choice on that, above the transition frequency.
And if I needed to apply EQ, I would go into my Denon, my multi EQ, and I would bump the decibels up on that at that particular frequency, correct?
So is what you would do if you had multi EQ, right, and you wanted to manually adjust it, right? You would say, okay, what do I need to do? I want to do this. I want to do a EQ. So I say EQ. All right, what do I want to do? So you tell it what your thing is. I'm going to say, I have mini DSP 2x4 HD. I'm going to say my target right here is subwoofer. But if you wanted to do your full range, so I'm going to say, hey, full range, low frequency cutoff, I'm going to say
this
700.
Is detecting your mini DSP on your network, correct?
No, you have to tell it.
Okay.
Normally this will have, it'll have all these. You have to tell it what thing you're doing, or you can just say generic if you're manually doing it. I think there's a generic in here. I thought there was. Pretty sure there was.
There's a slider on the right that you can go up and down.
Oh shit! Yeah, see yeah, there it is. You can do generic and tell it how many bands you have and how many EQs and stuff like. That's super super advanced. But the mini DSP is what's nice about this is really cool about the software, right? You tell it what you have and it automatically populates the Q step, which if you don't know what that is, that's like you have a Q, right? It might be 1, and it might be 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 1.10, or 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and it has your frequency bands, whether it's fixed or whether it's variable. That's what this is. It's loading those options in here. So if I go generic, right, I would have to do configurable PEQ, go to settings and say, okay, how many filters do I have? I might have 30 EQ bands and frequency range, and then apply the settings, and then it'll tell you, but it doesn't quite do the stepping stuff like that. I haven't messed with this generic one since the new software, so honestly I don't know what all. Oh, here. Oh, it actually does give you that. Awesome. Okay, cool. So this is new, which is
I'm
amazing.
just going to step away for 1 second, but yeah,
So
keep
this
talking about this.
this gives you the step that you can create. So if you have like YPOW, for instance, you can tell it, hey, I have a frequency range of, let's say, whatever, 700, because that's all I'm doing, to 20,000, and the steps in frequency are, this, and then the gain you can set are in 0.5, and then the Q also has a step of, like, I think in YPOW it's 0.2, and it only goes from 1 to, like, I forget, 5 or 6 or something like that. So then you can hit apply, and that's whatever limitations you have in the actual software, like your EQ. I think Odyssey, you buy the new stuff, it's unlimited type of deal, so you would just use like another, you wouldn't use generics for something that's actually limited. But me, I have a mini DSP for my sub bass, but for this I am just going to use I'm going to use extended, I'm going to use full range, I'm going to tell it the cutoff is 700 hertz, and I am going to look over here, and I'm just going to put my 20 to 20,000 hertz. I'm going to look at and line this line up right here to about the midpoint of all of my EQ right here. And if you notice this blue line, so I probably should lower this to like 200. The blue line is where it's EQing right here. So, and you can see right now it's at like 75 hertz. I could probably bump that up. That's just because of the level that I had. And you can see that blue line. That's basically what this EQ is going to try to target. So once you have that set, that's your target. You've given it a slope, a frequency range, and then this blue line is it showing your target. And you can turn the target on and off, but you should leave the target on so you know what you're doing here. So that's how you set what target you want. And then right now, yeah, this thing it's given me, Jesus criminy, a whole bunch of EQs.
Well, no, because you typed in 30.
Did I type in 30? Let me see. What did I type in? Probably. Oh, I think I just said extended. I needed to. I didn't know what extended it was. Yeah. So let's just say I had 7. Right. Apply changes. Okay. So then what you do is you can come down here, filter type. This is where you're going to match your filter. So even though I have a target set, I can say, hey, I only want to match filter here to, well, I know my speaker doesn't do anything above 10K, and I'm okay with that natural roll off. So I'm just gonna, oh, well, shit. I guess you can't even do that here. Maybe it's 11,000. Let's see here. What am I doing wrong here? Low match response, individual boosts. So you can say, hey, no more than 6 dB overall max boost. Let's say 12. Flatness target. How flat do you want it? Plus or minus. If you're doing like these high frequencies, plus or minus 3 dB is generally people will say, oh, 1, but plus or minus 3. Like I said, remember that line that I said, hey, perceivably, you're not
Mm-hmm.
doing anything. You can't really tell, you know, reference level plus or minus 3 dB. That's, I mean, even your speakers, like every speaker, like give you measurements of plus or minus 3 dB. I don't know if this is only allowing, if it's because of the, oh, I wonder if it's because of my EQ that I set. Let's just go to mini DSP because probably easier. 2x4 HD. All right. Now, let's just do 20,000. Well, actually, I just said, let's say 10K. Yeah, I think I had that EQ, how I had it set. I had it limited, so it was like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, you can't EQ something that your EQ system isn't capable of. So now basically I'm telling this system, hey, try to flatten me out from 200 hertz to 10K, right? So I chose my EQ system, which in my case was the mini DSP. I said full range speaker. I said, hey, low cross cutoff is 200, and as you can see, it added that line here. So like if you were doing 80 hertz, see, it would move it out to here.
Okay.
And you can leave it at that as well, because really this is where you're applying your EQs down here. But I generally do, 200, or I set it that way just to kind of give it less to calculate. Here's exactly what it is. Max boosts individual, so each EQ that I have, it'll no more than plus 6 dB. Overall max boost, I just did 12. Flatness, I'm going to go ahead and just say, hey, let's just do 3 dB as the target. These are newer options that I haven't messed with. I generally don't allow narrow filters below 200. That gives you some weird, you can get a really flat response, but it's going to sound very dull. From my experience, but you can do that if you have some weird anomaly in your bass. But normally I leave that unchecked. And then once you get all that done, you just hit match response, and it creates your EQ system. Now, here's my speaker, here's my target, and then here's the predicted. And most of the time, like 90% of the time, this predicted, if you leave the mic in the same spot, it will be exactly that. So if I had a more capable EQ system, this is what my speaker would look like.
Okay. So how do we get that from REW to your AVR or to your
if you
processor?
have, okay, so if you have one of these systems, it's easy. So if it's on this, except for the generic, if it's on this list, it's easy. You go down here and you just save filter coefficients.
Okay.
And is what that does is you would label it left speaker. Is what that does is it creates a file that then you can upload from your PC to, you connect to your device like your mini DSP, and then you just upload that file.
Now, would you upload? Let's say I had 9 bed layer speakers. Would you upload 9 different files?
Yes.
Or would you do them all at once?
You would upload 9 different files generally. You don't have to. if they're all relatively the same. But yes, you would upload 9 different files.
Okay.
Yep. And you can come down here and generate measurement from predicted. So basically, whoop. So basically, with the speakers that I have, if I compared it, right? If I had a better EQ system, I could go from this to this, which is extremely flat, right? So that would be like, where did I say 200 hertz? So I would go, to my 10K, like, oh, is that my flat? Oh no, I was like, wait, that's the same one. I would basically be, and see, this is my predicted measurement, right? Now, if you notice,
It's a lot more horizontal.
yeah, it's a lot more horizontal in that case. It's, but now it has an upward slope a little bit, which, again, that's all relative on where you start.
The
Again,
speakers are too
all this
bright.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Look at how bright that is. Oh my God, it's going. Plus, yeah, I mean, this is relatively as flat as you could ever get a speaker. If I had a better EQ, that's what I like about these speakers. They do take really well to EQ. But as you can tell, it's you're never going to get perfect, but it did get rid of that dip there.
Right, the 2000 and the 2000.
Yep, but I would need a better EQ system in order to do that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but again, it's not, it's not like, oh God, that's, like I said, within that line, you're not hearing a difference.
So,
I don't care.
All right,
but,
so you got your files. You
Yep.
uploaded them into. I keep saying Denon or let's just say whatever.
You upload them into the system that has the EQ, whether it's a mini DSP. If you're doing, because mini DSP, a lot of people use that for bass or subs,
Right.
but that can do 2.2. You can have a left or right and two sub outs.
Yeah, so you upload it into your AVR or your processor 9 times.
Well, one for each.
Or however times your bed layer speakers are, or whatever you're looking.
Yeah. Each,
So,
like if you go into each, speaker, generally it'll show you. Well, on some of them, it'll show you what you EQ'd or what the system auto EQ'd. You know what I mean, for each speaker, and that would be the same thing here. You would have an EQ file for each speaker that you would upload to whatever system or EQ system you're doing. Right.
So now you've uploaded that, right, 9 times.
Mm-hmm.
Do you run Odyssey? Because if you run Odyssey or Dirac, it should wipe all that out, and it should use exactly what Dirac is telling it to do, which is basically what this did, correct?
No. So everything is a little different. You can, but that's the thing about EQ systems. Every one of them does something different, and they have their own target curve.
Right.
If you buy the app, you can kind of more adjust that target curve, but without that, you really don't know what they're targeting, right? I mean, you could be in here, right? And you could say, okay, let's see, my target, let's just say my target is, the same, but I want a, where is this?
So I guess what I'm asking is if I upload all this stuff into my, AVR, the moment that I turn on Odyssey or Dirac, it's going to negate what I just put in there, correct?
Correct. You would use Odyssey or Dirac to get your measurements, distances only. That will do your time alignment, if you would. And then you would do this for EQ. Now,
Okay.
Normally people are using the built-in auto EQ unless you're doing something like Joe and Chana's True
True
Target or some
Target and Magic Beans.
app. Yeah, you would in that, if you're using that, you wouldn't use the the built-in app. But again, if you have this, you're going to measure and see, oh yeah, I like it or I don't like it.
Right.
You'll see exactly what that system's automatically doing. And if you buy your your app where you can adjust, hey, I want the target to be a little bit different. Hopefully it's actually doing that. I don't know. I assume it does, but that's what's good about this software. It will show you whether it's full of shit or not. Because this is a third party, there's no skin in the game for this software to lie to you.
Right.
So it shows you exactly what's the difference is. And like I said, you can see, like I have, this is a prime example, right? I have this speaker and then I have natural. Look, it didn't do shit to this speaker. It didn't do anything in natural mode. Okay, let me look at front mode. I know front mode turns it off anyways. That's what it does. It just allows the natural speaker to play. And I think it does something in like maybe the bass range only whenever it's on front mode. But then flat, oh wow, that actually, look at that did something. I went from 71 dB to 76 dB on this whole range here.
Yeah,
so that actually did something. So the flat mode in my processor actually did something. If I did not have this, I would have no idea. I would just be like, well, this sounds a little better to me, or it sounds brighter to me, but I don't know what's correct. You know what I mean?
The highs are more pronounced.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this does. So it's actually doing something and it works. So that's what's up.
Again, this is all going to be subjective, right? All subjective to what you like. Some people say, Kefs are too bright, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you may not want to turn that flat on.
Yep.
Right? So, because it may make it even brighter,
Yeah. It may literally flatten all the way out here if it's not a speaker like this that naturally starts rolling off at 10K, right?
And who knows what your target curve is? You could like the Harman curve, which is the dip and the kind of like the smiley face, right?
And it's very room dependent with this, because, and this is what I do like about Magic Beans or True Target that everybody gets hung up on why it's not. So is essentially what it does, and this is just paraphrasing, it's basically EQing the system, the speaker, at the transition point, trying to take out any crappy room effects.
Room modes, yeah.
Because if you have, all metal surfaces and everything's like super bright up here because you're getting all these reflections, well, you don't want to negate the speaker, because you're just muddying up the whole thing. At that point, you're just like, hey, this is what this speaker should sound like in this room, is what he does. Where just doing at the listening position is trying to compensate for lack of room treatment, which is one of the biggest things that most people don't do, which that's where Magic Beans has an advantage. It's like, okay, I'm kind of trying to take out the room. You're not taking out the room because the speakers are in the room, but as close as possible. I'm not trying to over EQ a speaker that can't be, EQ'd. And then obviously he's adding the bass, everything below that, because a lot of your transition is frequencies that are controlled by the room are all this super squiggly stuff, right? That's the room, right?
Right.
Around this, 500 or 600 hertz is where that is. So the room is taking control here. So you would want to EQ, at the listening position for sure here, right? Because that's kind of the room, and you're trying to compensate for that. But that's where you need more capable subs or more capable speakers to be able to have a little room to boost or negate. It's better to cut always than it is to add, um, but that's not always possible. And the more capable the speaker, the more you can boost in specific frequencies, right?
And
Because
this
this,
particular measurement that you took, I don't know when you took it, but do you remember if you took this at reference level or did you?
no, I mean you can. This is what I've. It's coming out the same volume that it's. I took it at 70, yeah, roughly 76 dB.
Okay.
Um, so, yeah, that's why that's another reason why I adjust my gain on the
Mm-hmm.
output. No, okay, hey, this is roughly that is what I took it as 75 dB. So, whatever that happens to be on my stereo system volume, which usually I usually do it at -20 or something like that on my system, or negative. This might have been at 10. This might have been at
Negative
-10.
10. That sounds about right.
So, um, but
Well, look,
anyways,
I know we're
this and
coming
yeah,
up
it's
on three
very
hours here, but
boring. Yeah, it is very, very, very boring stuff.
no,
It
I
really.
think this was very. Me personally, I think this was. I mean, we had the same amount of people holding on the whole time, so I think the people actually like this. Scaled down version of REW.
Yeah, this is like you're not even at 1% of
Right.
what this.
So
The other.
what I'd like to do is, when we don't have a theater tour, I'd like for you to, give us, because obviously with as many measurements as you had, you know this thing pretty well, and everybody can see that you know this. Obviously, you got the new program that you still have to learn, but you know, I'd love to talk about next time. Maybe we take an actual measurement, a live measurement, and then maybe we can look at next time how to integrate your subs. Right, you can look at your subs at the crossover point and see what we need to do to blend those subs. Is that a difficult topic? Maybe.
Um, it depends. If you're talking about doing phase alignment and convolution filter, yes, that
Okay.
would yeah, that's not something that they're. I would just say, hey, look that up, because that's very in depth. Most of the time, you don't have to do that. Most of the time, you're just manually time aligning each one, um, of those, and you can do that in here. But for the most part, your stereo does a pretty good job of that. But if you
Thank
have
you for
multiple,
being polite on that, every JJ. REW for dummies, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it gets complicated. So like this, I mean, the other thing that people in this that is really one of the best tools is to generate a RT60 decay time, which I usually do 1/6 octave, um, and then you can generate off of your measurement here. Well, maybe I say that, and what did I do wrong? Oh, I've got this thing. Um,
You had it pop up earlier. There was a green.
well, I've got this thing off
Yeah.
where it's I've got the view all skewed because I was doing something and I don't remember why.
Yeah, but I definitely want to revisit REW with you, and there you go. Now you're getting it. Uh, Definitely want to visit REW with you a little bit more. Try to pick your brain on some of these things because there's a lot of us out here that's never used it, and quite frankly are probably scared to even look at it. Right? Scared. I'm just gonna let uh, Odyssey or Dirac or Room Perfect. I'm just gonna let that handle. Or I'm just gonna let it handle it all. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you get a system and it's like, oh yeah, this is amazing. And this is just fun stuff. Um, but people will, you know, use it and be like, "Oh, look, I know exactly what my system's doing. It's so much better," or whatever the case may be. And it's like, is it really? Is it really that much better? I think I did acoustic time. Yeah, I had to have. I don't know why this isn't showing my line on here. Do I not have it on? I can't see it. I must be blind here. There should be a line here that shows my decay time, but I don't see it. Um,
There it is.
do you see it? I don't see it.
You're moving it up and down now.
Well, it says it, but it's not showing me the time. Let me. It should actually have a line in here. I must not have it. I must have done something. I must have done something. Let me just set this to auto. And when set, calculate the perspective, and then generate the RT60 decay time. Am I on it right? Yeah, I'm on a speaker. I was like, I'm not on a subwoofer, am I? It might be here, and I just can't see it because I'm blind. Yeah. But anyways, this is normally will show you a line across here, and actually show you. Right now, it's not working.
I can see the line. I can see your access point.
Well, this is my cursor.
Okay.
There should be. See how this line is right here? There should be a line going across here that tells you your. Oh, I see. I'm too far over. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay. Well,
there's a blue line there. I can see that.
Yeah, I don't see it yet. I'm blind though. Like I said, this is. Oh, there. Oh, I think I thought I saw it. Nope, I don't see it. Oh well.
All right. Well, we'll revisit that next time. We're pushing 3 hours right now. But yeah. No, I definitely like to revisit this again because I definitely think it's educational for people.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things here. The RT60. Like I said, normally there's a line here that tells you like what your decay time is, and that will tell you if you need more like absorption.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, we'll dive into all that on the next session. We got a couple guests coming up the first and second week of October, and then we'll probably maybe get back into this. Speaking of that, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please send us an email to hometheaterhublive@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Ike's channel, Easy HT Tech. And then if you would, please do the same with Horizon Home Theater. Definitely appreciate everyone tuning in. And we'll see you on the next video.
All right. Later.